Okay, Husker fans, are you fired up for the season? 13 more days. Katie knows the number of days until the end of school. I know the days until football starts. 13 more days. It's been a long summer until opening kickoff against South Alabama on ESPN at 11 o'clock. There's good reason for us to be fired up this year, I think. Second-year quarterback Adrian Martinez has been named one of the 50 top players by ESPN. We know as a freshman he threw for 2,617 yards and 17 touchdowns, just as a freshman, and rushed for 629 more. There is good reason to be fired up for this year's team. We also have second-year Scott Frost, 1 year under the belt here, and so things seem to be turning around in a really good direction, and that gets us all excited. We've got to have a great penny a point for pantry this year. Fire. We often say fired up about something when we are really, really deeply passionate about something. Fire is a word that's metaphorically used to describe intensity and passion and warmth. So, in a game, when we see Martinez throwing several touchdowns in a game, somebody around you might say, "Man, he's on fire." Fire is a word we often use to describe intensity and passion. In the Bible, fire is used as a sign of destruction, but it's also a sign of God. For example, in the book of Exodus, Moses experiences the presence of God in a burning bush, a bush on fire. And we learn that through the leadership of Moses, through Moses' passion and intense desire to serve God and to free his people, that freedom will result. The fire, a little bit later in the book of Genesis, we read about a fire on top of Mount Sinai, and about the encounter of Moses with God, like a blazing light, a fire. And in that encounter, there is not destruction. Rather, out of that fire comes the gift of Torah teaching. Torah is the first 5 books of our Old Testament. Torah means law or teaching. On the Festival of Pentecost, we read the story in the 2nd chapter of Acts, in which tongues of fire appeared on the heads of the followers of Christ who were gathered for the Festival of Pentecost in Jerusalem. And this is a story about a great spiritual awakening, a beginning of how the church moved out of Jerusalem and into the wider world. So all throughout Scripture, fire is a spiritual metaphor, which means purification, transformation, illumination, and it symbolizes the divine presence. So in today's lesson from the Gospel of Luke, Jesus says, "I have come to bring fire to the earth, and how I wish it were already kindled. I have a baptism with which to be baptized, and what stress I am under until it's completed." Jesus, what on earth are you talking about? The text seems to be quite out of character with the Jesus that you and I are familiar with. Whatever happened to the compassionate Jesus who fed a multitude of hungry people, or the Jesus who healed a man with many demons, or the Jesus that stopped to have dinner with Mary and Martha and Lazarus? We look to the Greek translations of the New Testament, and perhaps it helps a little bit. The word that we translate stress in our Bibles in verse 50 is not quite the word that's meant to be, I think. When we're stressed, it's usually because we're overworked. We're extremely anxious about something. We're really tightly strung. But this isn't the meaning of the Greek word that's translated as stress. In this passage, the verse is not meant to show the anxiety of Jesus. Rather, the Greek emphasizes how Jesus is totally absorbed with something in the mission that he came to accomplish. So I think that verse 50 should read, I came to bring a new awakening to the earth, and what passion I feel until this mission is completed. I think that's the better reading. I came to bring a new awakening to the earth, and what passion I feel until my work is completed. Jesus understands himself as a servant of God, and Jesus is on a mission, and Jesus is filled with passion until the work is accomplished. Jesus often refers to Isaiah and Jeremiah, or at least the writers of the New Testament Gospels will portray Jesus in light of the young Jeremiah and the prophet Isaiah. Jeremiah says something like what we hear. Jeremiah chapter 20, verse 9 says, Then within me there is something like a burning fire shut up in my bones. I am weary holding it in, and I cannot. Jeremiah has this passion within. He's going through a time where Judah, the southern kingdom, is about to fall to Babylonia. And Jeremiah is tries to keep the fire of God, but he can't hold it in. And I think you know that when God lights a fire within us, when there is a drive or a passion within us, it can't be contained. Jesus is the fire of God that's stirring things up. Jesus is the fire of God that's making a difference in the way people live. Jesus is igniting a fire, meaning Jesus is bringing transformation in people's lives that's bringing a new awakening. Jesus proclaims there should be justice in the household, that there should be equality in relationships, that there should be a fair and equal distribution of goods within the life of the community. And in any way or situation in which power is misused and where the powerful begin to take advantage of those who are weak, God always takes the side of the weak. And so Jesus comes to ignite a passion within the people to care, to deeply care, and to have passion to help those who are weak. I think if life is to have meaning and purpose, then we have to be on fire about something. We have to be on fire for the ways of God. Jesus is the one that we look to illumine the way of God for us. In fact, the early followers of Jesus were called simply that, the way. Church, there's a fire that's taking place within the Christian church disciples of Christ. Kay and Chris and I, who attended the General Assembly in Des Moines a few weeks ago, were invited to hear a report from the Disciples New Church Ministry, which is now in partnership with Hope Partnership for Mission Transformation. Every year at Pentecost, we take an offering for New Church Ministry. Pentecost is And we've been doing this for a while. And we've been doing this for a while and probably not even realizing what our dollars are going to and how they are transforming the lives of so many communities in the Christian church. We have moved, our new church movement is more alive and stronger than ever. We have moved from starting just 5 to 10 new churches in a single year to now to an average of 40 to 50 new churches in the Disciples of Christ. Since 2000, we have planted 786 new congregations and counting. Disciples, new churches have reached more than 50,000 new disciples, which is more than our other 3,800 established congregations combined. These new churches look a little bit different than us. Most of them may not even hardly be what we would refer to as a traditional church. There is a community in Chicago called the Non-Traditional Extravagantly Welcoming Church. And it's serving the residents of 5 neighborhoods that are along the shores in Chicago. And the stated church, or the stated mission of this church, without walls, because it doesn't have a building, is to make the communities safer and stronger and better. Worship services are rotated in each of these 5 communities. And they're often held in coffee shops, and they include hip-hop and rap and the spoken word. And they regularly have artist showcases that provide dance and song. Beloved of San Diego is a progressive contemplative disciples community in San Diego that began 5 years ago in 2014. And early on, this new church met in apartments, clubhouses, or in homes of members. But a favorite meeting place is a park, because if you're in San Diego, where do you want to go? You want to be outside. And so their church is meeting outside generally. Their core values are grace, inclusion, and compassion. They created a Beloved Compassion Network which leads workshops and retreats on compassion throughout Southern California. They broadened their vision in just 5 years to build interfaith partnerships, relationships. They welcome the LGBTQ community and their families. And they reach out to families who are struggling with mental health. These are a couple of examples of what new church beginnings are doing. They're on fire. They're on fire. In our own corner of the world, not Chicago or San Diego, but right here in Lincoln, Nebraska, right here at Bethany Christian Church. In our corner of the world, God is lighting a fire to bring transformation to people's lives. School supplies for children in Norwood Elementary, whose parents can't afford to buy them any. Toiletries, household supplies, laundry supplies, bedding, and clothes for Kia House, Hanu House, Houses of Hope, and the Bridge. Because these organizations transition clients or residents on a daily basis. And they're always in need of fresh bedding, sheets, pillowcases, towels. It's their greatest need in halfway houses and three-quarter houses. Last year, Bethany provided food assistance for 525 families, 1,374 people. Last year, Bethany gave almost $40,000 to mission, both here at home, in the United States, and around the world. And through the Good Samaritan Fund, we help people in crisis with a tank of gas, a motel room, a utility payment, a rent payment, Church, I think God is lighting a fire within us. We've been in the top 100 congregations in the United States and Canada with disciples and giving to mission for a decade. God is lighting a fire within us to meet the needs of the poor. It's exactly what Jesus proclaimed in his day and time. God calls all kinds of people to do the work of God in the world. God calls young people and God calls older, mature people who can sit around the table and crochet and knit like our Priscilla group that does so many wonderfully kind things for people in our community. God calls us, and God plants a fire in us with a passion to do something for the work of God that will make a difference in the world. So church, it's time to get fired up for football, but it's also the time to continue to celebrate the way that God fires us up to do mission for God's work here. We offer an invitation to any who would like to become a part of this community that seeks to provide a place of sanctuary, that seeks to provide some healing or some service to those in the wider community.